Hi, this is Ned Siegfried from Siegfried and Jensen. As proud sponsors of BeliefCast, we hope you are inspired by Todd's weekly podcasts, which contain so many courageous stories of recovery and personal growth. Remember, it's not what happened in the past that matters, it's what happens in the future. We invite you all to work hard and be optimistic about your future. Enjoy today's podcast.
Well, here we go again, everybody. Thanks for joining us. This is Todd Sylvester with the Todd Inspires BeliefCast. Thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate all your support. I can't tell you how much this is impacting people's lives because you guys are spreading the word and getting these stories out to, everybody. And these stories are amazing. I'm so grateful for the guests that I've had on. Today is going to be an amazing guest as well. He's been on before, but before we get to him, I got to give a shout out to our sponsors, Siegfried and Jensen, Wasatch Recovery, iHeal Institute, and Veracity Networks. Thank you guys for believing in me. Great organizations that run their companies in ways that would inspire anybody. And so thank you so much for what you guys do. And again, I'm just grateful for this opportunity to have a really good friend of mine on. He's been on before. His name's Steve Cutler. Steve, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, excited to be here.
Yeah.
Round two, right?
Round two, man. Yeah. Your first one, for those who maybe are listening to this now, haven't listened to it, you need to go listen to it. It is, I can't tell you how many people have commented of certain things that you've said on that podcast. They're like, man, that guy, Steve, he shared this. I'm implementing that into my life now. Yeah, so I recommend anyone who, hasn't heard his story, his full story, go listen to the first one. And today's going to be a little different format, but yet it's going to be amazing. Little background on Steve. Steve helps people and organizations evolve to higher levels. As a coach and a consultant, Steve has helped hundreds of people and businesses improve processes and protocols that have led to skyrocketing performance. With over 20 years in health and fitness, in tech and entrepreneurial ventures, Steve brings a strong background in operations, marketing, sales, and financial performance. I do need to mention, Steve used to be my personal trainer. And I think it was like 3 years, that we did.
Yeah, I think
something
so.
like that.
That's why you look so good.
That's why you should see me today, dude. It was amazing. But honestly, I learned so much from you, Steve, in those 3 years. It wasn't just about working out and, eating right. And that was a big part of it. But the lessons I learned from you, the life lessons you taught me every day was so cool.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Steve currently runs Evolve, a lifestyle clothing, coaching, and consulting business. Steve is the host of the Evolve podcast. And if you haven't heard his podcast, you guys need to check that out. We will put the links to that in the show notes and everything. I've been on his podcast, which was kind of cool.
A few times.
A few times. And it's been downloaded now over 20 countries and in just 10 months. And I know we were just talking about you're hitting these large downloads now, and it's just going to start getting some traction. So hopefully this can help that today for you.
Yeah, great.
In addition to Evolve, Steve currently leads the marketing for, how do you say that?
Udo. Yeah.
Udo. It's a tech startup in Utah, Silicon Slopes. So that's really cool. We'll talk more about that.
Yeah.
And then most important, Steve's a proud husband and a father of 3 beautiful, smart, amazing kids.
Yeah, they're amazing.
They
get
are.
that from their mom.
Well, yeah, thank goodness they have their mom. No, I'm kidding.
Right.
No, Steve, you're an amazing guy, and I wanted you on again. I knew the moment we finished the first one, I'm like, definitely going to have you on again.
Yeah, it was great to be back.
Yeah. How long has that been? Has it been about a year?
Maybe, or 2 years. I'm not sure.
Maybe it's been 2. Life goes by so fast.
I think the pandemic happened, and
you know what? It has been 2 years. You're right.
So I think it's probably been 2.
Been a couple
with
years.
The pandemic, yeah.
Well, like I said earlier, I think the world of you. I love the way you live your life. You live a principle-based life. Why don't we give our listeners, though, that may not know much about you, give us a little background on you, like maybe where you grew up, a little bit about your family life.
Yeah, so I grew up in Utah, family of 5, and have lived a few other places, but for the most part, I've lived in Utah. We actually live right down the road from you and from your studio here in beautiful Sandy, Utah, and have a wife and 3 amazing kids, and they're probably older than I'd like to admit at this point, because when I do, then that means that I'm older than I want to admit.
Older, exactly.
Right. Great family life growing up, and great family life now. Really fortunate and blessed.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we do live close to each other, which is cool. And like I said earlier, you were also my fitness coach. And at that time, I think you were 100% into just being a fitness coach. Is that correct?
Yeah, for the most part. So training and coaching was my primary business. I had a few other things I did on the side. I worked for the University of Utah doing some athletic testing for performance athletes, sometimes Olympic athletes. I also worked for what was at the time the Utah Career College, I think was the name of it, as an adjunct professor teaching exercise science and training design and programming classes. And so I would always keep I always have to have a few irons in the fire. I'm
Yes,
just
you do.
one of those guys where I can't just focus on one thing. I tend to have one thing that's my major thing, but then I have a few other projects to just keep me excited.
Yeah.
So when we worked together, health and fitness was my primary
focus. Yeah. Well, and dude, you were no joke, and I really say this with all the sincerity of my heart, dude. You're one of the smartest guys I've ever met.
Well, I'm glad I fooled you to think
so.
You
have fooled me really well. But no, honestly, like you really are like so knowledgeable, and maybe it's not just because you're smart. You put in the work to figure these things out. You dig deep, you study, you learn from people, and some of the stuff you taught me as my trainer. Like I said earlier, it wasn't just training, it was life lessons and, seeing things differently and that kind of thing. And I mean, I think that's kind of how you conduct your life, right?
Yeah. For a few years, I used to ask the question of what comes first, kind of the chicken or the egg concept is it that you get into better shape and that helps to improve your internal, the mental, emotional, spiritual aspect? Is it that you improve that and then the body gets better? And I don't know that I ever really got an answer of which one comes first. I think it's that we evolve in a way that we focus on. But they also become kind of these reciprocating principles of if I get my body into better shape, I'm developing more discipline, which will make my mind more disciplined.
Yeah.
If my body gets into better shape, then I tend to have more of a growth mindset because I have to challenge myself.
Yeah.
My preconceived notions of what it means to get in shape have to go away. And so I have to develop growth mindset because when I hit a sticking point or when I'm at a plateau, I have to figure out how to overcome that.
Yeah.
And those are soul evolution points as well, because you can't evolve your soul and you can't improve who you are as a human being without getting stuck and then having to work through it. And so I've always believed that the physical body is just a physical manifestation of habits that we've had in the past, whether they're mental habits or emotional habits or whatever it is. And so I think that, when I was working with you and I've truly evolved this concept through trial and error over years, that you don't just focus on one thing. It's not just, okay, I'm going to get in great shape and ignore everything else.
Right.
One thing might need to be the primary priority or the resource that you're going after, but then you can't neglect those other pieces. Yeah. And so I've always been one to look at the links between, the evolution of the body, the mind, the soul, all of those different aspects and say, okay, how am I going to grow in these areas?
Yeah.
Part of it was from observation. I'm a guy that I try to take the world as it is rather than how I want it to be by observing what's happening. And when I got into health and fitness, I noticed that there were a lot of really fit people, bodybuilders, you name it.
Yeah.
But they were horrible at relationships. They were horrible with money, and they just had no way to take the skills and transition that into the other aspects of their life. And I used to joke with a friend of mine who was a great bodybuilder. I said, if you could be this disciplined in your financial management, you would be a multimillionaire right now.
Right.
You're eating these perfectly detailed 6 meals a day. You've got this perfect relationship with understanding your body, but you blow money left and right.
Yeah.
You have you're not tapped into your emotional intelligence. You don't have great relationships with people. But if you applied those same discipline principles and habits to other areas of your life, you'd actually be pretty amazing in those areas too.
Wow.
And the funny thing is, we had a conversation not long ago, and sure enough, that's what he's doing. is saying, I learned the discipline, I learned the habits in the body. Now, how do I apply those to other aspects of life? I think it's easier when you do it together and you just start to thread those things in.
Yeah, I love that you say that, Steve, because, with the clients I'm dealing with, a lot of them, they've been addicted to heroin or meth or alcohol or whatever, but they were really successful maybe as a basketball player or a tennis player and I would always ask them, when you stepped out on, this, and I'm speaking of a current client who's a tennis player, amazing tennis player, by the way, like pro level.
Okay.
And I say, when you step on that court, what's going through your mind? What are you telling yourself? And it's like, no, I can do this. I'm strong. I'm going to win. Yeah. Right. And you've got this really strong mentality. And then I say, how did you get there? And like you just said, these principles of discipline, I've practiced and I've worked on it. I've gone to camps. I got training underneath some other great tennis players and so on. And I go, if you take that and just shift it in being clean from your addiction, it's game over. No pun intended, but seriously, like it is literally all you have to do is shift those same principles into that. And it's cool when they catch that vision, they go, oh, I never looked at it that way. Well, so I love that you say that.
It's funny that you bring it up like that, because far too often, one of the things I've told people over 2 decades of coaching is that the majority of the answers that you need right now for your life are sitting inside of you right now. You've heard it, you've seen it, you have lived it, but you're just not awake to it.
Wow.
Think about that for a second.
That. Yeah.
We've all been through challenges. We've all become really good at something, but then we just stop that process of moving and transitioning what we learned from one aspect of life into another. And so, like I said before, one of the things that I've worked really hard on for my life is to try and accept the world for as it is.
Right.
I look at it, I observe it, and say, okay, this is what it is. Now, how am I going to respond to that? And far too many times, people will become a great success in one area, and then it's like they're completely stupid in another aspect of life because they're not realizing how brilliant they are over here, and they can move that brilliance into another area of life. And one of the things I used to do, I actually still do it with clients now, is I'll say, all right, we're going to list out all of the things that you're great at. What are your strengths? What are the things that you are really good at? And that's a really hard thing for a lot of people to do, because we tend to spend the world or spend our days looking at the world in a negative light and ourselves in a much more negative light. Yeah. But when we list out the strengths, then we say, okay, great. Now that you understand what your assets are, how can you apply that into your current challenge? You were disciplined in tennis. How can you apply that discipline? What were like you're talking about, the coaching aspect? Yeah. Why do people get coaching in tennis, but they don't with their finances? Why do people get coaching with tennis, but they don't with their mind? Right? It's just absolutely crazy to me that people don't apply those same principles, because what worked in the area that you were brilliant at still works in the areas where you need some growth.
Yeah. Boy, very well said, Steve. Thinking back though, I mean, again, I know you love learning. I mean, that's one of the things when I was working underneath you and being trained by you, what I realized you weren't, I was shocked, because I thought, okay, I'm going to go there. I'm going to get in shape. I want to get in shape, this and that. And that was a part of it, but it was a small part of it. Right. You had taught me other things. And I remember I would leave the sessions going, my mind was stretched. I'm going, dang, that was like, yeah, it was a good workout, but at the same time, man, I learned something really powerful about me. Yeah. Right. And I thought you were really good at making those, Todd, look at this. This has everything to do with this, but you're not looking at it. Yeah. Wake up to it, like you would say.
Well, yeah, you have to wake up to those things. And one of the biggest challenges, and frankly, I wish I could say that today, as you and I are sitting here right now, that the world is better at doing that, but I actually think we've gotten worse. Most people don't have a high degree of self-awareness. They don't understand how they feel in the moment, right? So they haven't gone through a process of developing that part of the emotional intelligence to just say, I have awareness about my emotions and what my triggers are and all of those things. Yeah. The other aspect and the reason I say that I think that it's gotten worse is When your attention is focused on an electronic device, a phone, an iPad, something like that, you have no ability to turn your eyes inward. Like, it just doesn't happen because you're seeing out towards this fabricated life that we have put on social media of someone else.
Right.
And don't get me wrong, I don't think social media and technology is a bad thing. I'm not one of those, let's go back to the 1700s and churn butter by hand things, right?
Right.
But what's happened is I think technology has progressed at a level that we have not been able to culturally and emotionally keep up with because we have become so addicted to staring at something rather than looking internal and understanding ourselves.
Wow.
And so if people were to do one thing that would change their life, it would be to turn off the devices or set them in a completely different room on a regular basis and just meditate on what they're great at. What's wonderful about them. There's nothing bad about that. There's no sense of humility in not knowing what the hell you're good at. Right? You can't be humble if you don't even know what you're good at.
Right.
But if you know what you're good at, you know what you're great at. Humility then comes in the application of not inflating the ego. And so when you understand your strengths, you will be able to lean on those strengths to fix problems in a much better way. So if you are, like for you, you're a very detailed, and I think the word that you've used to describe yourself at times is obsessive when it comes to achieving goals, right? Yeah. And I knew that, and I recognized that about you very early on in us working together.
Yeah.
And so I said, all right, if I can plant a couple of ideas in your head, you're going to obsess about those. And then that will be the spark that will get you to the higher level. Yeah. And so then once you understand what your strengths are, then you play to that. Like, we all have strengths. We all have weaknesses. That's just life. Doesn't matter how long you live, whether you're going to live to 50 or 90, we're all going to have strengths and all going to have weaknesses. So again, accept that as is, right?
Right.
So for you, I knew that if I could get a couple of things in your head and you would obsess about that, then those are healthy, and that would help you to get to that next level.
Yeah, love it.
Once you do that, then you start to play games. Yeah. And I'm not talking about mind games with people that like try and manipulate them.
Sure.
I'm saying play a game with yourself. So remember years ago, we would talk about, like I know we were working on getting your biceps bigger, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so we had these different sets that we were doing, and these different protocols to grow your arms. And so I would have you look at the weight from the side and say, okay, look at how narrow it is, right?
I remember this.
That's your bicep right now. And then when you turn and you go, and you're twisting and you're pulling that bicep up, now you're seeing the full weight. But then imagine that all of the iron, all of the steel that is in that bicep is now trickling, or in that weight is now trickling into your bicep. Yeah. And you are stealing the power from that dumbbell. Yeah. And that dumbbell is light, not because of gravity changing, but because you are stronger. And you did that, and you obsessed on that. Yeah. And within 2 or 3 weeks, I can't even remember what the number was, but I think when we measured your arm size, had to have been something like 1 inch to 1.25 inches that you had grown arm size because of that mental practice. And then it's fun, right? Yeah. Change, it doesn't have to be always painful in a bad way. It can be painful in a good way.
In a good way.
You loved that burn. You loved how it felt. You loved that. Man, that was awesome. Yeah. But playing the game, you made it happen.
Yeah, that's so well said. And I remember that too. And I still to this day, I just imagine that iron pouring into my bicep. And I remember another time where you really stretched, but it reminded me of how powerful I am as a person. We were doing tricep pull downs with a rope, and we put on a heavy weight, and you said put on enough weight that by 10 or 12 it's really burning. Yeah. So I did. It was hard. It was hard to get to 12. And I remember I get to 12 and you said, hold it there. And you said, I want you to do 25 more. And I'm looking at you going, are you crazy? Mm-hmm. I'm fried. That's my max. I got 12. That's all I can do. And you're like, no, do 25 more. Yeah. And I wouldn't have believed it had I not experienced it. I did 25 more. And I'll never forget leaving that day. It wasn't because, I'm stronger now. That's not where my head went. I went, I can do anything if I just put my mind to it. Right. And whether that's with working out or if it's a speaking event, or if it's being a better dad, or if it's being whatever, right?
Yeah.
I just that one of those lessons that I have never forgotten.
Well, it's funny, there's the old adage of that when you, and it's actually true, when you take an elephant when it's very, very young and you tie it to a stake, tie one leg to a stake, that elephant will fight and fight and fight and fight, and it can't get away from that stake because the stake in the ground and the rope that's tied to the elephant is strong enough to hold that baby elephant to the stake, right? Which, for the animal listeners of your podcast, I'm not promoting this.
Right.
But the concept is that then, as the elephant grows, at a certain point, the will is broken, and they don't have the will to try again when they're bigger. And so people will look at elephants that are tied to these little tiny stakes and say, well, that elephant could tear that rope,
easily
pull
rip
that.
it.
But they don't, because their will was broken and they established what we would call a fixed mindset at an early age. I can't break free from this. And far too often we progress in life and we don't realize that we are the massive elephant that can stomp, can pull, can push, can do so many different things. We're not the young, weak child that we once were.
Right.
And so that's why I say lean into identifying your strengths. Lean into figuring out what are you actually really good at.
Yeah.
And if you suck at that, which most people do, go to the people that love you, the people who know you, and ask them to say, look, I'm horrible when it comes to understanding my strengths. I've got 3 things on the paper. What am I great at? What am I the best in the world at?
Yeah.
What is unique about me?
For sure.
And then just shut the hell up and listen to them. Like literally, I have had so many people and they're like, yeah, but I said, no, take your yeah buts, toss them in the garbage, just shut the hell up and put your ears to work and listen to what people are telling you that you're good at. Don't discount it.
Yeah.
Don't put some fabric softener and soften it down. If somebody says you're a kind, caring person and you're one of the most loving people that they know, write it down. And you're going to feel uncomfortable, but I don't care.
Yeah.
Live with that uncomfort until it becomes not uncomfortable.
I love that.
Right? Discomfort, it doesn't last.
Yeah.
And so every single person, I mean, think about when with that weight that you were doing the tricep press downs with. That was really difficult. But you fast forward 2 weeks, it wasn't. Right?
For sure.
You got stronger.
Got stronger.
And so if a listener is hearing this and they're saying, but it's hard for me to recognize my own strengths. Cool. Do reps. Get people to tell you what you're great at. And then listen to them. And just shut up and listen.
Just listen.
Get good. Get good at doing that. And then when you are in a state where you're not around people, take that list and tell yourself that. Repeat it over and over again. Because if you tell yourself those things, that will actually waken what is inside of you. The true power of your soul will expand. See, I didn't make you, Todd Sylvester, into anything different.
Right.
I just showed you that you are one of the most maniacally determined guys that I had ever met in my entire life. And I was going to be kind of a jerk to make you see that by having you do 25 more reps or whatever it was, right? Because I love you and I want you to be your best. And you had some blinders onto it. But as soon as you saw that, then what happened, right? The whole world opens up to you.
Yeah.
You wake up and you've evolved into a different person.
And I think that's what you're so good at, whether it's in fitness, whether it's with your clothing line, whether it's with your podcast, whether it's just you as a dad. You're very good at helping people see that within themselves. Yeah, you said it earlier, that. Everything we need or want, we already have it. Yeah. It's there. Yeah. We just have to tap into it. And that's all you were doing. Right. You were having me realize, Todd, it's there. Just tap into it. Yeah. And I'm not kidding you. It was like, and it was a bigger, and I get choked up when I think about it. It was a bigger lesson about life than pulling down that weight. Right. Okay, that was cool. But the life lesson I learned when I walked from there, I was like, dang, that was incredible. I needed that, you know?
Yeah, and you're making me choke up a little bit too. No, it's a good thing. That's what friends do, right? Yeah. We love each other and we empathize with each other.
Yeah.
And that is life. And I think one of the things, if people, so I want to go back just for a second and talk about the chicken and the egg thing, because people say, well, where do I start?
Yeah.
Well, number one, I would say start with, if you're in a triage type situation where everything is going wrong, maybe you're a drug addict and you need to get clean and sober, start there. Start with whatever the worst thing is, right?
Yeah, right.
But also start from a place of strength. And if you don't know what that strength is, find the strength. Like, ask other people. Every single person has one or two people at least in their life that know them to the point that can tell them the things that are the best at them. But then once you have that, get to work. Play the games. Go to the gym. Go on a run. Do something that you're going to be proud of. Tell yourself, I'm going to run around the block. And then when you do, celebrate the hell out of it.
Yeah.
Go to the gym and say, hey, last week when I was at the gym, I was doing curls with 10 pounds for, 10 reps. Do 11. Do 11 reps because you can. And then be proud of the fact that you did a little bit more.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer that when you train your body on a consistent basis, but you use it as mental training, as a way to win the day, win the moment, then you'll win in the bigger things that you do in life.
Yeah.
You think about some of the best boxers in the world, they don't train the heavy bag and the hard punching all the time. They shadow box. They focus on the technique. They get really good without a lot of weight in doing the technique over and over and over.
And they're
again,
almost even just tapping the bag. They're not really hitting it hard. They're just working on their technique, like you said.
So learn how to shadow box in life, meaning do the thing when stress is not high that will develop what we call the neural pathways, right? The pathways that develop the neurons to fire in a certain way so you can respond at your best level when times get tough. See, my wife and I practice this almost on a daily basis.
Yeah.
We want to have good communication in the tough times. We want to have good communication when conflict comes up. Everybody has conflicts. All relationships do, right? There's going to be disagreements, fights, arguments. But we realize that if we practice when we're not in that heightened state, we'll actually get better. Yeah. And so we have this routine that we do in the mornings where we follow Marshall Rosenberg's process through nonviolent communication of expressing an emotion, expressing a need, and then talking about the strategy.
Wow.
So it could be as simple as you and I sitting right here, and I say, Todd, I feel grateful to be sitting here with you. So that's my emotion, gratitude, right? My need is to be able to express that to you and to really get across how grateful I am to you for all of the things that you've done for my life. You were the guy that helped me to get my podcast going. You taught me some of the ins and outs, right?
Yeah.
You were one of 2 or 3 people that really mentored me into getting podcasts going.
Yeah.
You've been a great friend to me. And so my need is to communicate that to you. Yeah. And so my strategy is I'm going to tell you this right now, but then I'm going to continue to tell you that for the rest of my life. Right. And so we practice this emotion, need, strategy every day. We kind of toggle back and forth. One day it's my day, the next day it's her day. And what that's done is it's gotten us into a groove and a habit so that when the stress levels are heightened, maybe we haven't slept, maybe we haven't eaten and we're grumpy, whatever the day is, then we tend to do better in those situations. I'm not saying that we don't ever slip up, but the great thing is when we slip up, one of us will look at the other one and say, wait a minute, this is not what we agreed to. These are not the rules of engagement. Let's go back to that. And then it's like this huge weight gets lifted and we say, yep, you're right. I feel like this. So then it's not you're a jerk, you're a whatever. So practice winning on a regular basis. Practice in a daily weight training session in the gym how to win. So then when you get to work and you're scared to speak up, you'll speak up because you know what? You hit one more rep on that bench press today. Or you won the day by doing some of those things. Practice in a controlled environment, and I guarantee that's going to trickle over into every other area of life.
Wow, love it. Very well said, Steve. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people might be wondering, I think, because, we hear a lot of growth mindset versus fixed mindset. Can you kind of just elaborate a little bit on those two? Just like what's the difference, and maybe someone hearing those terms for the first time, and then how would we cultivate more of a growth mindset?
Yeah. So a fixed mindset is when your mindset becomes fixated on one thing. So it could be a mantra. It could be that, I'm dumb. I'm not smart. I am an addict. I am weak. I am, whatever it is. But whatever that fixed point is, it could be a fixed point in time. Like I think back to one of the things that kept me from doing certain things in life. Like I always thought it would be a blast to play football. But I was always like the smallest guy, and I had a very fixed mindset. I was fast. I probably could have been a running back or a wide receiver or something like that, right? Because I was quick and I could, something like
You'd
that.
be good.
I don't know that I would be like Britton Covey for the Youths, but I could be, I could have been something, I think.
Sure.
But I had a very fixed mindset. I said, well, I'm small. I'm weak. I don't have great strength. The reality is I was actually pretty strong for my size, and I could have developed that. But I had this fixed mindset. I had identified with something that was fixated. And so I didn't get into football.
Yeah.
And then when I got older, I started to look at these fixed mindsets I had and said, all right, let's lay them out. What am I fixated on that is no longer a truth? And so I started to tear those things down and say, but what if through work and effort, what could I achieve? So I started to challenge all of that stuff. You know, I was afraid of heights. I still am to a certain degree, but I was afraid of heights. And so I said, well, how can I challenge that? Well, I picked up rock climbing to lean into that difficulty.
Lean right in, right?
I had seen myself as the fixed mindset of being small and weak. And so I started getting into bodybuilding and lifting weights and really pushing the limit to see well, how much weight could I gain? How much strength could I get to? I don't know that there was a limit I think we've all got certain limits, right?
Sure.
But the idea with a fixed mindset is that you're always fixed on a point in time, or you're fixed on a certain concept or an idea. A growth mindset, on the other end, is that through work and effort, you can improve anything in your life. Now, there's no doubt in my mind that I will and would have never been an NBA player. I don't have the size. I don't have the height. I didn't have the build for it. I played basketball over and over and over again, and I think no matter what level of coaching, I probably would have never made it into the NBA. Right?
I do want to point out, you did just cross over the professor the other day, and that was pretty cool.
Well,
you drained a nice jumper on him.
He's a really nice guy, and he let me do that.
Dude, I tell you, I saw that, and I thought, that is so cool, because I followed that dude, too. And I'm like,
he's so
guy's
much
amazing.
Fun. Yeah, it's unbelievable.
I mean, the guy, the way that no one can handle a ball like that guy.
No.
It's unreal.
He is unbelievable. And you know what I'll
anyway,
tell you.
I had to point
after,
that out.
It was so much fun. After that, he and I got on the phone, the next Monday, and we're talking. And we're talking about some collaboration and some different ideas that we had of how we're going to work together, how we want to work together in the future. And I told him, I said, Grayson, I've just got to tell you, I've met a lot of famous people in my life, and I'm very unimpressed with most. But you are one of the most genuine, good people that if we can collaborate and I can help you in any way, I'm all in. Because he is just such a great guy.
Oh, that's awesome.
But back to the fixed mindset, growth mindset piece, we will have limitations, right? But we really won't know what those limitations are until we go headfirst into it and just give it a shot. And I think one of the common fears is, well, what if I fail? You're probably going to. I mean, that's the reality of it.
Yeah.
If you look at everything in life that you do, you're going to fail most times.
Yep.
But, the funny thing about when we grow up in a society and we start to pick up on social mores and social cues, we tend to get a little bit more self-conscious. But at no point in time does a baby stop and think, oh, I fell on my butt, and so I probably shouldn't stand back up because maybe people are going to laugh at me and my walking is really funny looking. And so babies don't think like that, right? They just get up and they practice and they go, and then they finally walk, and then they learn how to run, and then you hold a sucker out in front of them and they run like hell. And if we can develop a growth mindset, which is just set aside the voice that's in the mind, set aside the thing that is telling you can't do it, or maybe you look like a fool when you fail. The reality is nobody cares. Nobody's going to care if you fail, right?
Yeah.
We make it up to be this thing like everybody's going to care. We've all failed. The people that are the most successful are the people that have failed more than the rest of us.
Yeah, because they just keep trying.
They learn what didn't work, and they keep trying. And that's the idea with the growth mindset.
Okay.
And so it's really about leaning into discomfort, disrupting your current state. I think a disruption has got to be the number one thing. So if you're currently in a habit of going and getting the Little Debbies on the way home from work, and that's what you eat when you sit down on the couch, then you have to disrupt that. You got to do something to shock your nervous system and do something totally different in order to get into a habit of doing something different. I'll tell a story about a client I had at one point. She came to me, and she was a very nice lady, or young girl at the time, but she said, hey, I want to get into shape for my wedding, and I just kind of want to tone up a little, and everything was a little this, and I want to do a little that, little this. And so I'm picking up on the words and what she's telling me, and I'm thinking, she's minimizing her entire life. She's minimizing who she is. She's got a soft voice. She hides herself. She tries to make herself smaller. And so as we started to get into the training, I would have her do bigger, bolder moves. And as she was doing bigger, bolder moves, the confidence was starting to grow.
Yeah, right.
And then little by little, the weight starts to trim off from a fat standpoint, and she starts to get stronger. And then little by little, I would put this idea in her head that, wow, that's a really athletic move. Nice job. Wow, you're looking like an athlete. Yeah. And she had told me time and time again, she just wanted a little bit of progress. I'm not very athletic, but I knew she could be. And so trained her to the point where one day I said, okay, before we get into your physical training, we're doing mental training. I want you to stand right here in the mirror, and I want you to stare at yourself and tell me what you see. And she had a really hard time identifying any of the changes that were going on.
Bet, yeah.
And I said, well, look at the shape of your shoulder. And then I'm gonna hold up the picture of what you were before. And she goes, oh my gosh, I'd never recognized that. We went point by point. And I said, and you're pretty athletic. Steve, I know you say that, but I'm not. And so I had set it up to the point where I knew how I was going to go about this disruption. And I had kind of set up one of my other clients to be there at the same time. This kid was a phenomenal basketball player, one of the most crazy athletic kids that I'd ever worked with. And I said, hey, come over here for a second. And she just kind of looks at me like, what's going on? And I said, could you do me a favor? Like, this is so-and-so. Can you just do your thing that we were just working on? And so she goes into that exercise. She does it.
Yeah.
And I looked at my basketball player and I said, what do you think? He goes, I can't do that. That's amazing. Like, that's some seriously athletic shit. And she looks at me and I said, now do you believe me? And from that point on, the fixed mindset was gone.
Yep.
And then the confidence started. And instead of walking in a little bit at a time, she stormed into that gym. She owned that thing.
Owned it.
And
love it.
The disruption has to happen. Every once in a while, you got to look yourself in the mirror and say, hey, dummy, wake up, because you have been asleep at the wheel and you've been living in this fixed mindset of old you, and newly evolved you is already here, but you need to wake up to recognize that the new person is in the room. Say goodbye to the old, because they left a long time ago. Elvis has left the building. They're gone. New you is here.
Ooh, dude, that is powerful. I got to say, dude, I needed to hear this today. Seriously. Thank you for sharing that.
I think we all do.
And again, folks, I told you, I mean, Steve is a wealth of knowledge. He knows a lot. And what I love about you too, Steve, is not only do you talk about these things, you do your best to live those things.
Yeah.
I know you do, because I know how you live your life, and I always admired it. Thank you for sharing that. I think a lot of people were like, what is the difference between those two? And I don't know if we talk about that enough. So I'm glad you kind of put that, opened it up to us, created our awareness around it. We're talking about principles here. Obviously there's, certain things. What are some principles you live by? Like, are there some that stand out to you, Steve, that, hey, these Todd are my most important principles I like to live my life by? I mean, I know every principle is good because it's leading us to do something good. But are there some that maybe stand out that you could share with us that really maybe impact your life in a good way?
I think probably 2 or 3. I think the first one is just the idea of a principle. Like the fact that principles are important impacts my life. Okay. And that's probably the most important thing because, I grew up in a household and in a religion where there was a lot of rules and there were a lot of things that you were told you had to do. And I think many of us grow up that way, especially if we grow up in a religious background, that there's rules and there's regulations and there's things that you do. And then you get into school and they give you the rules there. And you go to work and there's rules, and government has rules, and there's rules everywhere, right? And so these rules and dogmas are very fixed, and they lean into fixed mindsets, and they actually will entrain fixed mindsets into people. And what I found is a better way to live is to develop a principle. And principles can be as simple as just creating an if-then statement for yourself.
If-then?
Yeah. So if this happens, then I will do this. And the beauty of principles is it gives you massive flexibility when needed, but it creates a North Star for you to always fixate your compass on, right? So that you know the direction that you're going in. And when I shifted my life from rules and regulations to principles, it opened me up to where I didn't feel guilty changing my life when my life needed to be changed.
Yeah.
We all evolve and grow. But in order to do that and feel good about it, I have to have a principle or several principles that I feel really good about, right? Yeah. And so it's not so much about what rules am I living by, but what's the principle? Principles take away massive guilt, which guilt gets in the way of people changing.
For sure. Right? Doesn't it, man? Boy.
I think the only time that guilt can be something that is an effective emotion, and this is a very, very, very small time, is if we have intentionally hurt another person. Mm-hmm. And you think about your life, like how often have you intentionally hurt someone else? Very few times, right? Yeah. I'm not saying we don't do it, but very few times have we intentionally hurt someone. Now, if I hurt somebody but I didn't mean to, I'm going to feel sad.
Right.
But I'm not going to allow myself to feel guilty because I didn't intend to do that. And what a more useful emotion is one of remorse, where I can look at them and say, you know what? I did hurt you.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to, but it doesn't matter. I did.
Yeah.
And I apologize. And so principles are something that give you the flexibility, but they're also the thing that you look to. I think the second principle is one of disruption. We actually have a T-shirt that just says "disrupt" on it.
I've seen it. It's pretty cool.
We talk about that often in our podcast. Is what are people doing to disrupt in order to progress and evolve their life? And in my own life, the times when I feel like my evolution has kind of skipped and moved forward a little bit more, it's because I've done something to disrupt. I've done something to change my current habits and my current patterns and disrupt the nervous system to get me to do something else.
Right. I like that.
And I do this on a regular basis now. I've worked this into my habits. And so every 2 to 3 weeks, maybe 4 at the most, I'm changing up my workout program with what I'm doing, how I'm doing it. Maybe I'm changing the tempo. Maybe I'm adding some more band work or chains or, whatever it is. I'm changing up my workout every 2 to 3 weeks, maybe 4, right? Because that disruption is what helps to trigger my mind that it's time to change.
Oh, okay.
And so I think when people can plan in this principle of disruption, do something different. We always talk about do something better. Frankly, I think it's horseshit because you don't always know if something's going to be better.
Right.
Right? We hope it is.
Yeah.
But we don't know.
You don't know.
Just do something different.
Yeah.
And if it's better, great. One of the things that I used to do that I no longer do is I would read books and then I would get all into whatever that book's dogma was. And I would say, this is the best way to live. And instead of just actually reading it, trying it, and say, I'm going to do something different. And the reason I don't go all in on the belief of a new dogma until I've actually tried things to determine what works for me is I'm not going to waste time holding on to things that don't work. And so, somebody may write a beautiful book with the 10 principles of making yourself better looking or whatever it is, but really only one or two of them actually work for me. And so if I disrupt on a regular basis and just try something different, I'll find what works. I'll find what is going to be the best thing for my life, right? So it's not about doing something better. It's just do something different. Try something different and disrupt.
I love that. Very cool.
And then I think that the third principle that really has stuck out to me, and that's the reason that that I named the podcast and the business Evolve, is I truly believe we all evolve over time. I believe that we grow into different entities and different human beings as we go through life. Now, some of us do it better than others because we are more awake and aware to adapting and adjusting as we go. But we really evolve over time. And, I think about like my son, for instance. We were sitting and having a conversation, and it was actually a really cool thing. He came home from being out with his grandparents. They took him out to dinner for his birthday, and Grandma and Grandpa come in and they say, "Wow, Johnny is a great driver. We felt so comfortable with him driving the car to take us to dinner.
Yeah.
We could just relax. What a great drive." Here's a kid that's 16 years old, right?
Right.
2 years ago, he didn't know how to drive.
Right.
But within a short period of time, he's developed this skill of driving, and he is aware, and he's got all of these different abilities to be a great driver. And he really is. But what happens in life is there's the principle of evolution. The challenge is recognizing it. Kind of goes back to what I was saying before.
Yeah.
Most people don't stop to say, I'm really good at these things.
Yeah.
Maybe 10 years ago you sucked at your finances. Maybe 15 years ago you were 20 pounds overweight. Maybe whatever it is. But we've all evolved and we've become better. And then that leads to kind of the principle of evolve and evolving. All too often we look at where we're not in life. Well, I used to be in better shape. I used to be a little bit leaner.
Right.
I used to be better at this. Great, but where have you evolved? And you've never been this age before. You've never been at this stage of your life before. And so if you want to change something about your life, do that.
Yeah.
And maybe you haven't perfected the process of being much better with your money, or maybe you haven't perfected the process of staying in better shape relative to what your goals are. That's fine, but you have evolved. Your mindset has changed. You have grown in your perspective, and you've learned things that have worked, and you've learned things that haven't worked.
Yeah.
And so we all evolve, and I think that's an important principle for people to understand. I don't care where you've been in your life, the deepest dredges of your life, you've evolved out of that.
Yep.
And even if you're in a difficult situation right now, you're only in that situation because of what your life took you to, and that was part of your evolutionary process.
Yeah, wow. So well said. Those are amazing. So the first one was just the principle to what a principle is.
Principles over rules. Principles over dogmas every day of the week.
I love that.
Yeah.
Boy, I was surprised that you said that, actually. I wasn't expecting that, but
good.
very well said. And
Thank you.
And then the second one was
disrupt.
And then the third one is evolve.
Yeah.
And again, I'll say to our listeners, this is how Steve lives his life. I'm not saying he's perfect. Might sound like I am, because he's actually pretty dang close.
Call my wife. She'll tell you I'm not.
Call his wife. She'll put us all in our place. But no, I don't know. I could talk about like this all day. And you've probably heard this before, Steve. You have a really good way of explaining things.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Like you really do. Like you walk. That's why I think you're such a good coach and a good trainer and a good marketer and a good everything you do, because you're just good at explaining and creating a story, explaining a very powerful principle.
Yeah,
you did that so well. So beautiful.
Well, I appreciate that. And I think if I am good at that, the reason I'm good at it is because I've had to figure things out along the way.
Yeah.
And so the way I teach is literally how I've learned. And one of the things that was a fixed mindset for me for so many years when I was younger is I was not a great student in school. I didn't get great grades. I was kind of the smart ass. I was the kid that, when I graduated, there was literally a celebration because it was like, I didn't know if I was going to graduate.
We did it.
We did it. Great job. See ya.
Yeah.
But at a certain point, I realized that I wasn't necessarily dumb like I used to tell myself I was, or I wasn't a bad student like I told myself. I just hadn't learned how to learn. And so once I learned that I really had to deconstruct things and then reconstruct them in a way that made sense to me, that was the game changer for me.
Yeah.
And so if I can teach well, it's because I've learned how I learn best. And the way I learn best is I see things, I break it down, I analyze the different pieces, and then I put it back together to say, all right, I've got to keep it simple.
Right.
I think if you were to put me up next to 100 people and you were to do an IQ test, I wouldn't win. I don't think I've got the highest IQ around. I don't think I'm even in the top 50 percentile probably. I'm probably in the bottom quartile. But I can remember things, and I can do things, and I can teach things because I've developed the ability to break it down and then simplify it in a way that makes sense to me. And I always joke. I say, well, I'm the dumbest guy in the room, and so I've got to dumb it down for myself.
Right.
And so what's worked well is because I can dumb it down for myself. Most people are like, oh, yeah, now I get it.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to butcher this quote, and I think it was by Einstein. He says, if you can't explain it, what you're teaching to a kindergartner, you don't understand it yourself.
Yeah.
I think he said something along those lines.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's exactly. And I think that's why I really thrived under you as you being my coach and me training under you, is that you did simplify it in such a way that I'm like, man, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't complicated. I didn't walk out and go, what was he talking about? It makes it was like, man, I totally get it. And therefore I learned the principle by just the way you presented it. So you're so good at that, man.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
You really
Thank
are.
you. And the great thing is, once somebody catches on to something like what you did, your intellect takes over. Right?
Yeah.
Your drive, your passion, your
For
soul,
sure.
Everything takes over. And now that knowledge is yours. It's not mine. It's yours now.
Yeah.
And you make it way better. So I just see myself as a person that if I can present something that lands well with you, you're going to make it 10 times better.
Absolutely.
I mean, we've all seen that with our kids, with other people we've taught, right? Whatever we teach them, they then go make it so much better.
Exactly.
My kids are far better human beings than I am.
Oh yeah, I feel the same about my own kids. Like,
right.
Where did they come from?
Yeah. And it's hard to look at people that we've coached or our kids and say, I did that, or I was part of that. I'm grateful to be in a situation where I can share something with somebody that then helps to provide a foundation.
Right.
But it's really just a matter of uncovering a truth that they already know deep down in their soul. And then once it clicks with them, the blossom is open.
It's open.
And now the beautiful flower smells great, looks great, and they will fertilize the rest of their lives.
Wow. I love it. Very well said. Well, I like to usually kind of close with this question, and because I think a lot of people listening, there's someone listening right now who's struggling.
Mm-hmm.
They're just struggling. It could be whatever, but they're having a rough day or a rough time or a rough week or a rough year.
Yeah.
What you've already shared some great things. Is there one thing you could tell this person right now who's listening, who's struggling? What would you tell them right now if you could say one thing?
Yeah. Well, because I'm not really much of a rule follower, I'm going to say 3. And you can come across and punch me. But the first thing is go to bed. Like, get some sleep. There's a quote in one of Hemingway's books where he says, it's easy to be hard-boiled during the day, but we're all soft-boiled at night. And when we don't sleep well, life is more difficult. And so if you can get sleep, it actually triggers the hormonal system and the cascade, the hormonal cascade, triggers the brain in a different way to where you can function better and you can get so much more done, but you also see life in a different way. Wow. So for most people, when they're struggling, a lot of that is tied to the fact that they're just not sleeping.
They're not sleeping.
And so find a way to get sleep. Sleep in a dark room.
Wow.
Don't stare at screens.
Love it.
Prioritize your sleep so that your mind has time to reset.
I think people right now are shocked that you said that, just by the way. Like, oh, sleep. But I think also people are going, he's right.
Yeah. Because if you look at your life, you're probably not sleeping if you're in a deep, dark place.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
And then you could say, yeah, but my life sucks and this is bad. But that would lead to my second piece. If you're struggling, I don't mean to minimize your struggles, but I do want to put it into perspective. So is everyone else. We all struggle. And so what I mean by that is not that you're not unique and special in your way, but suffering is part of the human experience. And so sometimes when we look at our life and we think, well, everybody else is struggling too, so I don't necessarily need to maximize and make this thing bigger than it is.
Yeah.
My struggles are just like everybody else, so there's a relatability to it. It does put it into perspective.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember times where I would look at parts of my life and be like, oh my gosh, this is so big, it's so bad, and so heavy. And then I would hear about somebody else's struggles. I'm like, well, shit, I'm glad I'm not in that space.
Right.
And then everything gets put into perspective. And so that would be the second thing I would say is just put it into perspective. You might be struggling right now, but if you're struggling right now, you haven't always struggled this way, and you're not always going to. Look at it in perspective. You know, time is not a linear thing.
Right.
There is a past, present, and future, but there's a lot more to it. Time is an abstract concept that lives outside of us.
Yeah.
If you go internal, you realize that time does not exist inside the body. And so put yourself into the state of success and understand that you can go from despair to elation in a very short period of time.
Love that.
And if you want to question me on that, the next time you go to a funeral and somebody cracks a joke when everybody is sad and depressed and everybody laughs, that proves my point.
Yeah.
You can go from sadness to elation just like that.
In a second. Yep.
And so it doesn't take a lot of time. And then that leads to the final point, which is find the best people in your life and connect with them. Tell them how you feel and what you need. I feel sad. I feel dejected. I feel lonely. I feel hurt. I feel whatever it is. Talk about whatever the emotion is. As soon as you recognize it, life starts to get a lot better.
Yeah.
But tell somebody else. And then be really clear on what your need is. I feel lonely. I need connection. And as soon as you say that with the people that love you, they will jump in, and the world is your oyster. Yeah. Everybody will start to come towards you. And it's amazing how we think we need to struggle alone.
Yeah.
The human experience is not designed to be something that we experience by ourselves. We are communal in nature. We are tribal in our soul. And as soon as you go to somebody and you tell them, hey, I'm feeling this way and I have this need, don't put that on somebody else. It's your emotion. It's your need.
Right.
But man, it's amazing what happens as soon as you do that.
I love that.
People's good nature comes out and they will find a way. And if somebody runs away from you, great. Then you know that they're not a great friend.
Right.
And so you're probably bad at choosing who your best friends are.
Yeah.
Go to someone else. And anybody that truly loves you will help you to get out of that despair. You're not going to get out of it on your own. Nobody is a success on their own.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
Wow. So well said. Wow. Sleep, perspective, find the best people, connect with them, and tell them what you need and how you feel.
Yeah.
Wow.
Don't blame them. It's your emotion.
Right.
It's your need.
Yeah.
But
love it.
Tell them.
Yeah.
And then let people help you to get that.
Wow. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. You know, I have to say, Steve, there's a lot of people who have helped me get to where I'm at in my life. I feel like I am a success. I really do.
You are.
I don't mean that in a negative.
No, you're
like bragging, but I feel like I'm a success. I really do.
So many ways.
And you're a part of that. You're a part of that team that helped me get to where I'm at today.
Yeah. Thank you.
And I'm so grateful for you. I want you to know that.
Yeah, I appreciate
this has been a beautiful conversation. I could honestly talk to you all day. I mean, I'm dead serious. And
we do often, right?
Yeah, we do.
When we start talking, we're like, oh my gosh, what time is it?
Yeah, we keep going.
Yeah.
But I want to just, I want people to know how they can get a hold of you, how they can find out more about the Evolve podcast, the Evolve clothing line. You know, if they want to ask Steve a question and want to connect with you even, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, I think there's multiple ways. One of the easiest is just on Instagram. I'm Steve Cutler with an _ at the end.
Okay.
Or you can find our Evolve podcast. It's just Evolve _cast on Instagram.
Gotcha.
The website where, we've got our clothing line, or you can get links to the podcast, is just evolve-cast.com.
Okay.
But shoot me a message. You know, I'm on social media. I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. But I love helping people. Advice is always free in my mind. The conversation is always free.
Yeah.
If people want coaching or want to go into something further, then we can have a conversation of whether or not it's a great fit.
Yeah.
I don't take on a lot of clients, but the select few that I do take on throughout the year are people that I really want to work with and people that I think will make the changes. Otherwise, I think people can get a lot of value from just ongoing content that we produce.
Beautiful. Well, awesome, man. I love what you're doing. I love the impact you make on people's lives, and you're continuing to do that. You're growing. I'm grateful to be a friend of yours. I'm grateful that I get to help maybe promote Evolve here. And so just, again, thank you for your time today.
Yeah, thank you. And one final plug. I've got the company that I'm working with Udo.
Yeah.
It's a phenomenal company, or it's a tech company that's in the northern part of the Silicon Slopes here. And our first product that we've put out is a product of in the health and wellness space. So it's a way for doctors and patients to communicate with each other and connect in a different way. And I've absolutely loved being there, and we'll promote it to the cows come home, because as we say, that miscommunication is a disease and Udo is the cure. So got to put a quick plug in for that, because I think there's great stuff that is going to come out of that company in the coming years.
Very cool. And we'll put all those links even to that in the show notes and everything. So thanks for saying that.
Thank you.
Yeah, what a great conversation, guys. What did I tell you, man? Today was going to be amazing. Thank you for tuning in. Please share this with people you know who need to hear this message, because if you think about what Steve and I have talked about, and especially Steve and the principles he shared with us today, I'm telling you, I needed this conversation today. Like, I feel like I just went through a coaching session. Thank you.
Thank you.
So please listen to this, share it with someone. I guarantee you, each one of you know 2 or 3 people who are struggling. Send them this episode, because I promise you, and then have them report back to you what they learned from the episode. I promise you, not only will you help them, but you'll be like, man, I just helped this person connect, and I'm so grateful for Steve's words, and you'll be surprised how good this feels. Right? So that's my challenge to every one of you, and I think that's why we're growing so fast, is because people are actually doing that. So I love you guys. Again, thanks to our sponsors, and Steve, you're amazing. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.